Whoa, wait, what was that last part? Well, folks, disregard that last part. All right, just listen to that first part. You
Well, I
know, if they
mean,
ever,
there is a nipple ring in this one.
I guess that's true. You know, if they ever do a Candyman cartoon, they should actually recruit you to do the voice.
Nah, I'm pretty sure that Tony Todd would do it for some money.
But they could pay you a lot less and still get the voice.
The backcountry voice, yeah.
All right, folks, welcome to Final Destination Month. We did this poll last month asking about the Final Destination series because we had planned to do this. One note, though, we already did the first one. It's back in the archives. You got to dig very deep. It's one of our first videos. Is
Or
the
just
first
search it.
Final Destination. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess Nick's a little bit better on the technology. So search it on YouTube on our channel if you want to hear our thoughts on that. And we'll be doing parts 2, 3, unfortunately, part 4, and part 5 all this month.
Should mention, I've actually still, to this day, have not seen parts 4 or 5.
So that's going to be very interesting to get Nick's fresh thoughts on part 4 and 5, which, hey, we've seen the poll results. Part 5 is actually the favorite amongst our fans, at least, or amongst our community. So
Yeah, that kind of surprised me. I assumed it was going to be part 2, maybe even part 3.
I thought it'd be the first one, honestly. So I think the first one, I looked at all the IMDb ratings and they go part 1, then part 2, then part 5, then part 3, then part 4. So the first one is still the higher rated one on IMDb at least.
Hmm.
And I think the first one is probably more referenced than the other ones. Outside of course, we'll get to the classic scene from part 2. We'll get to a few minutes, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those series we can just say off the bat that is pretty consistent. There's only one movie in the series I think you could argue is like overall a bad movie. So it's in line with like sort of the other series that mold are like Evil Dead, Scream, Child's Play. But we'll have to see how bad part 4 is because that could bring the whole series down below that level. But I've always thought about it as one of the better horror series out there, an original concept with death as the killer, not some average Joe Schmo with a mask on. So just the originality with that makes it stand out in my mind. But I've always had a good place in my heart for the Final Destination series. What's your how big of a fan are you of this series? Do you think it's in that upper echelon with those other series? Like, what are your thoughts on just the series? Not with getting the specifics about part like the different movies, but just the series in general.
So, obviously, so to be honest with you, since I just mentioned I've not seen 4 or 5, honestly means I probably don't care for the series as much as a whole lot of people, actually.
Hmm.
My After part 3, which as a kid I enjoyed. This movie as a kid I enjoyed. The first movie I actually didn't even watch that one until I was about 15, 16.
Wow. Okay.
Funny enough. Yeah. So to be honest with you, I'm not that big of a fan of the series. I like them okay, but they weren't enough for me to also go watch 4 and 5. So
It's very surprising. Yeah. Um, but am I right? Also, you haven't seen a lot of the Child's Play movies, also, right?
with Child's Play, I've only seen one and Bride of Chucky.
Okay. Okay. So there's some series because we're definitely doing Child's Play at some point this year. So it's definitely some series that's gonna be very interesting to get your reactions on fresh, having not seen them. So very interested in that because with all these horror series, a lot of them, if you saw them as so it'll help you because if you saw them as a kid, like I saw a lot of these movies as kids, so I do have always a nostalgic sort of bias towards them to a degree. So it's hard to actually give like an accurate review sometimes because the nostalgia cloud over the head is kind of like making you see things in a better light. So it'll be nice to get that fresh perspective. Um, the first Final Destination I saw when it first came out. This second one came out pretty quickly after the first one because the first one was a pretty decent hit at the box office, so they wanted to capitalize on that. So we get part 2 pretty quickly. In terms of within the story, this is 1 year later after the crash of Flight 180. And folks that are superstitious, keep that in mind. Flight 180 If you're ever doing anything in life and if the number 180 flashes before you in any context, just be a little bit more wary of your surroundings, look around for things that could play into your death. I have to be so negative and cryptic, but I'm always looking around for, hey, is my flight number 180? Is my bus 180? Is anything 180 in my life?
You know what else
I don't like
could
it.
be a negative if, say, you're doing a road trip and you're on the highway?
Mm.
Highway to hell.
Or even a bus of kids
Same
just like
pile up.
yeah, saying pile up a little kid with his two toy cars, smashing them together. Hey, you
And
gotta admit the beginning of these movies give you a lot of fun signs before that initial thing happens. You get a lot of fun signs kinda pointing you to where this is gonna go.
well, I mean, when we get into it, when we get to that scene, I do got a few questions before we get to the actual meat of the deaths.
Yeah, me too. Well, okay, so I guess we can jump into it. So the initial thing we see pretty much is a newscast, which is basically serving as a way to recap the events of part one. We have a newscaster talking about the events of part one, but also like getting into like really what we know, talking about things beneath the surface and not necessarily saying death's plan, but definitely the host on the newscast is like
Well, he
pretty
mentions
suspect.
he
So
does mention death has a list.
yeah, so it really on the nose, recapping the events of part one and telling us what this is all about. But unfortunately, our main character is sleeping through this newscast.
I mean, I would too. It sounds like a boring newscast, but
It does,
uh,
but was this the first sign that was supposed to be given to her? Like, hey, watch this newscast, wake up. And she just didn't, unfortunately, wake up in time to see it. But this is like the first sign being thrown in her face, I guess.
so I'm also assuming that because this is a year after Flight 180, you hear it all over the radio. You're seeing this newscast. Just before it being on, she's even if she did watch it, she's probably just going to brush it off.
The other two is so the events of part one take place in, like, I guess, in a town called Mount Abraham, I think. And how close does she live to that town? She's not in the same town, of course, but I don't think that far away either, I guess. I don't know, but they didn't
Uh,
really say, but
Well, they're when we get to that, I'm going to explain. I'm not going to explain about it. I'm going to have my thoughts on how close they are myself.
well, folks, let's establish one thing too. The Final Destination movies leave a lot unexplained. There's a lot left open to interpretation. So we're gonna have a lot of like theories and we're gonna have to like surmise our own thoughts because the movie doesn't spell out everything to you. There's a lot of stuff unexplained, just left to the viewer to like come up with their own however they want to see it. So a lot of stuff we're gonna say maybe not be backed up by the movie, just our theories. And we love to hear your theories as well.
And let's be
Um,
fair, that honestly, with a silent, invisible killer like death, all you get is theories, and also that's probably why a lot of people like this series because they can have fun creating the theories.
yeah, we're not gonna get that scene like the Scream movies where the killer takes off his mask and spends 20 minutes explaining his motivations, and we don't have no reveal scenes here, so it's like we're gonna have to like come up with our own stuff to a degree, and that's the fun of these movies, I guess, as you said, that you do get to put your own interpretation, your own spin on things. And knowing Nick's theories, we're gonna get some pretty crazy spins here, I'm guessing. I can't wait to hear your theories on this. Um, okay, so our main character Kimberly
Yep.
going on a road
Uh,
trip.
if you want, we can just go. I can just list out all the all the characters' names that we need to know right now, because we kind of see them all throughout this little montage of opening.
Sure.
So pretty much our characters. Now I'm not going to mention Kimberly's friends for one reason. One, I don't even think we get their names,
Um,
and two, they're not
they're
even
not
part of the story.
they're not around. Yeah, they're not around long enough. They're basically nameless characters because they're not around long enough to really play a
Right.
purpose
So
in the story. So
the characters of note is Kimberly, Burke, Kat, Rory, Eugene, Evan, Nora, and Tim. And if you want to note them, also Isabella and Clear makes a return.
okay, that sounds like pretty solid list of our characters. who most of them we're gonna see here in this opening sequence. Um, First we get, of course, Kimberly saying goodbye to her father as she embarks on this road trip with her friend, leaving behind some transmission fluid, making the father, being just a normal concerned father, call her immediately and say, "Hey, get that checked out
It
immediately."
wasn't that immediate. I'm sorry.
He
She's on the ramp. If I would have seen that, he should have called her immediately, like before she even hit the first red light to
listen, he
turn
put
onto the next intersection.
listen, that was pressing, but more pressing was his need to go inside and make a sandwich, all right? He didn't have breakfast yet. He was like, "After breakfast, I'm gonna call my daughter and hopefully save her life." So,
Yeah, he didn't even have
pri
his
pri
daughter there to make his breakfast for him.
priorities, man, priorities, so
Well, here's the real priority. So, in this, you get multiple, and this is more against Officer Burke. You
okay.
get two things that he should have done something. First is Kimberly trying to move over into a lane and then having to swerve back and forth because a log truck nearly rams them. Like
Yeah.
for one, I'd be pulling over that red Jeep now because why the heck were you not paying attention? Why did you almost kill yourself and your passengers?
True.
And honestly, they would have been far enough away from the log truck that everyone else would have died except them. The other issue that again Burke probably could have actually stopped the entire thing in general is he sees that chain of the log truck just dragging on the ground. I know
Mm.
he's not DOT, but for safety purposes, he does have just ability to pull that truck over.
Yeah, in hindsight, that would've made a huge difference, obviously. I think Burke is busy with his nasty black coffee. Put some cream in the coffee, Burke. I think that also, one thing to mention, I guess, in my research at least, I think they call it a lumber truck. Have you heard of that before? A lumber truck? Is that called the
No,
term?
I've always ever heard it called log truck.
Well, I'm gonna say log truck too, just because it rolls off the tongue easier.
Yeah,
I this movie probably this is the standout sequence of the movie and probably one of the standout scenes in horror movies because probably nothing you can think of has inflicted more real life fear in people than like change real life behavior more than this scene because I don't know about you, but I think all of us now, when the log truck pulls in front of us, we switch lanes immediately without a second thought.
yeah,
It's second nature.
yeah. Because the reason one of my whole things is unlike all the other movies, this movie actually causes a fear of log trucks.
It does.
Where because part three, people are still after watching Final Destination 3, people are still getting on roller coasters. After watching part four, there's the stadiums at NASCAR races are still pretty much covered, and obviously after part five, people are still driving on the damn bridges.
And of course,
So
people still fly on planes. Planes are statistically more safe than cars in terms of the likelihood to get into an accident. I agree. They really tapped into something with this log truck thing. It's like everybody who's been on the highway or just on any road at least a couple times a year, you experience that. You see that log truck. And this movie makes you just like cringe when it happens because you always think back to that scene. You're like, what if? And you
yeah,
change lanes.
and there is one other thing I have an issue with this scene. Kimberly, your dad told you you're leaking transmission fluid. Pull the fuck over.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess we can. Do you want to get into the actual premonition of everybody dying?
Yeah, so the premonition
There's
is
some brutal stuff here. I mean,
Eugene gets fucking forced to do the splits by his own bike.
woo,
Now to
ouch.
be now, I will also say what happens in this, honestly, besides Evan, I'd rather all these deaths to myself over what they eventually get. Besides Evan, because he burns alive.
Well, that's something I'm gonna want to explore is the idea of if you cheat death, does death like in a vindictiveness try to make your new death more painful than what you were how you were originally gonna die? That's something to keep in mind as we go through this. I love the very first thing, the log coming through the cop's car,
And just like
crushing him.
pulverizing them.
Yeah, you see all his guts fly out the back window. It's like, jeez. The Final Destination movies do a good job of showing the gore.
Yeah,
Creative deaths and you get the gore, so
so I will also mention my wife. until this day, has only saw the first Final Destination.
Oh, wow.
So I had her watch Final Destinations 2 and 3 back to back.
Oh, nice.
And her whole thing, she didn't want to watch them because she was afraid of the gore.
Ah, okay.
But I had to explain to her that parts 2 and 3. Now, granted, I haven't seen 4 and 5, but parts 2 and 3, the gore is there, but it is
Quick.
tame compared to what we get nowadays.
It's also quick. It's never going to it's not like hostile or like it's not torture porn. It's not gonna linger on the gore. It's
Mhm.
always just quick. You see the aftermath of whatever happened, and then it cuts to somewhere else.
It's
So
tasteful gore.
yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of gore, you get just enough to be satisfied. But if you're turned off by gore, you're not like, oh my god, this is just like disgusting, or this is a turn off.
Right.
Um, so there's a lot of cool deaths within this thing. I have no complaints about the sequence itself. The only thing I thought about is this whole sequence is like people. I mean, we've all been in traffic, right? Anything goes down in front of you, you slow down and hit the brakes. All of these people for the next couple minutes are all going as fast as possible to their death. And I'm
Well,
just like,
well, Nora,
I don't know. I
Nor-
don't know if that's
uh,
realistic.
Nora and Tim had a different reason. It's because one of Tim's water bottles fell under the brake because she tried to hit it.
Yeah.
So that one's different. What I have an issue with is all of a sudden another damn truck, I guess with its brake pedal completely missing, because this
Yeah.
thing didn't stop for shit.
That's what I'm saying because I'm like anything happens in front of you in traffic, everybody completely comes to a standstill. This movie is just like, what would happen if something happens and everybody goes full speed ahead? And I was like, I know they have to do it, but when you really stop to think about it, you're like, a lot of this would be prevented by just people doing normal traffic behavior.
Well,
Um,
especially like I said, that truck that just power drives straight through to our main character. I'm like, that, why didn't that truck stop?
well, okay, so now let's get to all right. The premonition ends. Kimberly. Well, one thing I want to mention too about her friends for a second, though. Obviously,
They're idiots.
the girl we're assuming is her best friend ish, even though she never really mentions her or mourns for her at any point in the movie. It seems like, but we'll assume she's a close friend. Who are the two jerks in the back? They're
They're
not
boyfriends.
boyfriends. No
They're boyfriends.
way. You think so?
Well, why else are they there? Even the blonde says, "Hey, can we get the guys already? I'm horny."
I think I think maybe one of them is her boyfriend, but I don't think neither of them is Kimberly's boyfriend because there's zero interaction with Kimberly and the guys that suggests that one of them is their boyfriend. And then, like I said, she doesn't really mourn the loss of her friend, so I don't think she's that close with these people. It's weird. It's just like
So what? They just picked up random juggalos, paid them $100 to sleep with them. Then
no, but it's weird because I mean they're going on a trip with them, so they have to be relatively close friends. You don't go on a small trip with like random people per se. Maybe some people do, but they seem like almost like those kids in the back seem like high schoolers. They don't seem like actual adults. It's just their behavior is like not in line with Kimberly's character. They're talking about like smoking weed, like partying and stuff like that. And Kimberly seems more like not that kind of character. So it's like it was just it was weird casting and just weird. Why not just have two normal serious guys in the back? Why are you having like Bill and Ted or like basically like stoners in the back? It was just kind of an odd choice to like not make them just regular dudes. They're just like they're over the top characters. It's kind of strange. But
meh,
anyways,
it is what it is.
but let's talk about what happens then because you were hinting at the idea earlier of Burke being a terrible cop.
Yes.
And my evidence of that is okay, when all this is going down, Kimberly's blocking traffic now, so everybody behind her is our survivors who are not going to be allowed to get on the highway in order to die, which is good. So Burke gets out of his car to come investigate. Kimberly gets out the car. Burke goes back to his radio to do something to kind of guess phone things in, call
Well, he
things
goes
in.
back to the car because that's because you see the log truck, which honestly, judging by the time frame we got of the premonition, should have been much further away. But
Yeah.
literally, she steps out and all of us and says, "There's an accident about to happen." All of a sudden, that log truck just goes fucking nuts.
Well, the thing is, by Kimberly blocking the traffic there and all them being behind, so their place on the highway is no longer there. So the entire accident was going to be different then. because none of those cars are there. There's no motorcycle there. So the entire chain of events is different because she's blocked off half the people that were involved in the accident. So it's a
You
whole
know,
different thing.
well, there is one thing that's not different. There's a truck with no brake pedal.
What the hell? Now this is my problem. This is one thing in the movie that's completely stupid. Okay. So Kimberly is standing near the car. Her friends are in the car. Now her friends at this point, I'm assuming are looking ahead and seeing all of this stuff.
Yes.
Now they're still in the road though.
Yes.
Okay, now first thing, my reaction, I think is going down. I'm getting out the car and running to the grass. Not in a way where I'm like getting out the car towards the highway, but on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just staying in the car.
Well,
Now,
there is one thing I have another issue with,
okay.
because the way everything is set, it looks like they're on the on ramp on there. So in order to get there, they have to move at least what 20, 30, maybe 40, 50 feet before they can actually get onto the highway. But the
Mhm.
way she parked, it would have been in front before anyone can even get there. So there's no reason that truck should have smashed into them the way they did unless it purposely jumped the curb.
Yeah, well, first of all, let's talk about is the truck driver charged with like manslaughter or something? Because he just rammed through a car that was like stationary. The car wasn't moving. So okay, yeah. Yeah,
No, I
what
know what it
exact
is.
wait, by the way. Yeah. There's no logs coming at this truck. What's the truck's excuse for ramming through a car randomly? I don't he's away from the action even.
I know what it is. You ready? He wanted that bag of chips in his sleeper cab, so he reached back there for it, taking his eyes off the road, and then
Was it the car from Maximum Overdrive? Like, I don't understand. The car was controlled by something, I guess.
it had no
Um,
brakes. It had no brake pedal.
okay, well, the other thing is that okay, so the way the truck comes, we cut to slow motion now because Kimberly's looking around in a daze, so she doesn't see the truck. No, nobody in the car sees the truck, I guess,
Up until it hits him.
which is really weird because in the background you see the cop sees the truck so far in advance that he's running towards the car in time to grab Kimberly, pull her to safety, and then
Mm-hmm.
we see the truck smash the car.
Yes.
Now, there's a couple things wrong with this. Okay, the cop having that amount of time. You're telling me everybody in the car didn't see a truck coming when they're in the car, cautious of their surroundings because there's an accident going on. They don't see a truck coming at them, but Brooke way back there is like has enough time to run before the car gets there. The other thing is their windows are open,
Yes.
I believe. Brooke sees a car coming towards a truck.
Burke.
Brooke, whatever his name is. I'm gonna call him Crook. I'm gonna call him a crook because he's stealing taxpayers' money by being a cop. All right, a terrible cop. But okay, if you're Burke and you see the truck coming and you have enough time to run and grab Kimberly, was it not a good idea to just yell out, "In the red truck, get out the car"? Any
It-
kind of warning?
It's
Like
also possible he had a megaphone in his work car.
like the human reaction would be while you're running towards Kimberly to grab her. Oh, first of all, you can just yell at Kimberly, "Hey, girl, get out the way! Truck coming!" Anything, yell anything would have at least given them in the car a chance.
No,
Instead, he's like, "Screw them! I'm gonna grab Kimberly, let them all explode." It was just terrible.
so I also have another thing. Trucks have big air horns on them.
Yeah.
Why did this truck not release the air horn?
Who the hell was this? Like the truck driver from Joyride? Was this the
Candy Cane just getting more kills in.
Candy Cane?
No,
Was this
Candy
Candy?
Cane. No, it was a Rusty Nails.
Was this the creeper from Jeepers Creeper? He was like, "I'm gonna get them eyes. I'm like, whoever's left in this accident, I'm taking them eyes." Like,
Oh,
what do
he
you have?
had some extra parts for him today.
I mean, this truck is so random. If they would have cut to like Tony Todd driving the truck, I'd have been like, okay, that makes sense. But I don't know.
Well,
That was a terrible way for the friends to explode. So
I still to this day say Tony Todd is actually our death.
well, that'll make sense when we get to our next episode
Mm-hmm.
because that is a theory that they I saw an interview with the producer where they asked the producer about that, and he kind of gave a non-answer. He was like, "Yeah, maybe." And there's a lot of fan theories online about that. Some people think maybe he's that. Some people think maybe he's on someone else's side. But I think let's save that for a little bit later because that'll make more sense later on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um,
But
well, in the aftermath of this accident, we always get a scene where everybody's kind of gathered together. The cop is trying to make sense of it at the police station. The other cop is saying, "Hey, these people are lucky as hell." Um, I guess I guess we have one scene of Kimberly sort of mourning for her friends a little bit. I guess you could say.
mourning or just in complete shock that something she saw actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a premonition that actually happens, that's got to be quite the mind trip because you have to think like, wait, am I psychic or am I only a psychic towards this one specific thing? Is it going to happen again? There's a lot of stuff that should I get a CAT scan? like so I don't usually like psychics in horror movies because they're like just there to find out information, but it's going to be a common thing in this series, so I accept it and that's how we move the plot forward. So, um this
Evan's
happens.
death.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's go to Evan's death. Evans is our lottery winner
Uh,
who was
lives
very
in
lucky and now very unlucky.
Yeah, but the first thing that happens here that kind of annoys me is he doesn't clean his pan. If you want good quality cheese sticks, you clean your pan.
I I knew something in the kitchen was going to annoy you. I had a feeling that
Or
the
the fact
cooking.
that he's using a toaster oven as a microwave.
Well, he's I mean, he strikes me as like the bachelor who probably just usually throws TV dinners in the microwave type of dude. So
But he didn't have a microwave. He had a toaster, which granted, okay, I guess I shouldn't say that. Toaster ovens can be used to reheat things. I used to have one.
well, this was before the time of air fryers too. Keep in mind.
That's also true. But also always check what you're putting in the toaster oven.
Yeah, true.
Because
This
if you don't, you may end up with a magnet in there.
Did this remind you a little bit of the teacher's death from part 1? Just how,
It
like, things sorta came together?
Yes, it did a little bit, minus, she died by a computer exploding in her damn face.
Well, Death really hated her because she got the most
She got the most brutal.
torturous. He did not he was like, "Man, I don't like how you teach your class." I don't know what the deal was,
It's the
but
fact that she started treating Alex like a piece of shit, even though he just saved her life.
yeah, I
If
don't know,
she
but
treated him with respect, she would have gotten a more respectful death.
maybe. So, for Lottery Guy, I mean, this is a fun death, and I would
Uh,
say it's an instant death, right? He got off pretty easy, so
so yeah, he got off pretty easy. But again, I'm just wondering.
eyes.
So what ended up happening is he gets his hand stuck in the drain because he dropped a ring in there because the magnet in his damn thing just blew up. So
Yeah.
wouldn't my first reaction not be go for the ring, but go for my exploding toaster oven?
I think that would be how most people feel, but this dude is like and by the way, he has enough money now to buy 55,000 rings because he just won the lottery. So how viable is the ring really when you have that much money now? So
How valuable is that lottery? He only it looked like I think he said he only won 250,000. He only won a quarter of a million. He still needs to be fair with it.
hey, it's enough to track gold diggers on his answering machine. So hey, um, yeah, this guy. Now, comparatively, you remember his death from the premonition,
Oh yeah, it was burning alive. It
burning
was
alive.
painful.
Yeah, I think he got off a little bit easier here.
Well, yeah, because when he gets out of the apartment, it explodes, and then he gets a ladder to the face, or preferably his eye.
So his death did involve some of the elements from his real death when you think about the fire and things like that. So there are the similar elements though. So well, a fun death, but I mean, he was basically a nothing character. So it was kind of like even in these movies, I still like a little bit of character stuff before people die, but it was still
Him, honestly, him and the other two we're about to see their deaths of, honestly, are fairly nothing characters. It's not until a little bit later we actually get character development.
yeah, we get really good death scenes for all these characters, but some of the characters themselves are kind of flat. One thing we could say is that one of the things we'll see a lot in these movies is that when stuff starts going down, the characters go back and research past events that maybe relate to their situation. This pile up, the car pile up thing, it happened 1 year after the events of Flight 180, which within the canon of the second movie, you could say, okay, is this happening once a year? Is this not like where they're going in the series? Because it happening 1 year after seems pretty coincidental.
It
But it never
does.
but it doesn't really come up again ever again. So maybe not.
Well, I mean,
Um,
granted, we do have a reason for this pile up, but I will go over that when we get to that scene.
uh I guess we can go ahead and cover the death of the young one. Now, the kid who dies, he's 15 in the movie,
Yes.
but originally written, it was going to be a 9-year-old. And then before they started filming, they bumped up to 11, and they finally bumped it to 15. It just felt like we can't really do this to a kid on screen.
So I still have
So,
an issue with this scene just because the guy is 15. I'm
mhm.
sorry. If you're writing him as a 15-year-old, then write him as a 15-year-old, not just take the 9-year-old scenes and give it to a 15-year-old guy.
You're talking
I'm
about
sorry.
look at the pretty pigeons.
That and running into a work site. I don't care how doped up you are on laughing gas. That shit goes away after 10 minutes. You don't run into a obvious work zone
Yeah.
just to get crushed by really powerful glass.
You know, what came to mind for me is that usually I'm anti-technology. I feel like social media and smartphones have gone too far, but if this kid had a smartphone, he would have walked out there using his phone, probably been playing a game, wouldn't have gave a damn about them pigeons or any of that stuff. Probably still be alive today. The absence of the smartphone doomed this kid.
So no, I feel like the smartphone thing actually probably would have worked in this one's with this one's death. It's just he's on a smartphone, not paying attention, walks right into the work zone, even though the people probably could have directed him away, and then crunch because the pigeon still would have flown off because he started walking towards him.
What if they end the scene by cutting to the phone and he was playing the game Angry Birds?
Or Flappy
Perfect.
Bird,
I would have the audience would have just laughed their asses off.
probably.
Now we should talk about this movie revealing what happened to our remaining characters from part one.
Clear.
Now, Claire is back as
But
Ellie Lauder, of course,
yep,
but I have one bigger pet peeve,
the fact that they
which is
killed
what
off Alex off screen.
well, I wanted to find out like why couldn't you bring back Devon Sawa? If you're gonna bring back a character, why not bring him back, right? So apparently Devon Sawa was in some kind of contract dispute with New Line Cinema. So maybe out of frustration with that, or maybe out of something, they just wrote him to have be killed by a brick hit him in the face. I just think that's a weak thing to like after the journey of part one to just read that in an article like you bash him a brick in the face. Just so random and I don't know. I don't like it. It rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the man was so careful. You would think like he's not gonna be around like falling bricks. Like, I don't know. But but Claire has the right idea, which is a padded
In
room.
a yeah, padded room in an insane asylum, uh, not letting anyone in really.
Well,
I do,
death can't get you if you're just isolated with nothing around you.
she still has a TV monitor in her room.
You're thinking of Nightmare 3. Thinking of Nightmare 3.
Or
Welcome
that,
to
yeah.
prime time. They just find her with her head in the TV.
Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Well, death has certain limits, though. I mean, death. There's a few deaths in the series where death really goes out of its way to make things happen, but usually it's like a natural order of things happening, sort of, I guess. But she has the right idea, and I appreciate her character coming back, even though I do want to point everybody to the alternate ending of part one, which does give her character a much happier ending. Alex actually dies in that ending, but it's probably a better overall ending. But it's not a good ending for setting up sequels. So we wouldn't have got this part two with that ending. But I would still point everybody to YouTube to watch the ending and see if you prefer that over the ending we got.
I still think we would have gotten a part two. We just wouldn't have had Clear in it.
You would move on to the same characters. Yeah, that's true. That's fair. But Claire is here also to give the characters information about certain things, like, "Oh, you've been skipped. Oh, you're safe now."
Which is, and then she takes them to Tony Todd.
Well, Tony Todd's character is gonna be in basically physically he's not in part 3, but I think otherwise he's in all the movies,
Yes.
and we don't know what the hell his background is. We don't know anything about him.
So I actually
I
looked it up.
I I can say one thing I know about him is that he looks like Candyman, but that's all I know.
Well, I know I looked it up, and apparently it's rumored. There's two things rumored about Final Destination 6. One is going to be a full reboot, which I
Mm.
hope to hell not, because this series doesn't need a reboot. It's just a fun series you can constantly play with different deaths in.
But what would that mean in this series though? Because it's like every every movie is like basically different characters, so it's like, what do you?
It doesn't need to be a reboot.
Yeah,
The other thing
I
is
I would know what that means though. It just means to me that means just a normal sequel. Like every sequel is like its own standalone movie. So
well
I don't know.
the other rumor is that we're going to learn more about Mr. Bloodworth.
Okay, now that can be good or bad because a good thing about him is he's so mysterious that we're left to like come up with our own theories. If they're gonna explain things, hopefully it's a good explanation, and hopefully they don't explain too much.
They're going to show him coming in with a scythe and just kill the last person in Final Destination 6
You know,
with ease.
we have our theories, but one theory about his character is that he's the original OG person to have gone through this process where he got the first premonition, survived it somehow, learned all the rules. Now he's been living his life, but he's able to warn other people basically.
So he's
That's just
living his
one.
life constantly just keeping himself alive.
He never looks that worried though. He seems pretty content. So it, it's one idea. He doesn't seem like somebody who has survived this and now is like in any kind of fear. He seems like he's figured things out. Like, but
Or
one idea.
there is another thing. He made a deal with death. That's why he works at a morgue. Don't ask me
Yeah,
to elaborate.
if you've been through that, it seems unlikely that you would then be, I guess, or maybe you would be more fascinated by death and get all these jobs that are like related to death. But yeah,
Mhm.
who knows? Okay, well, Kimberly puts two and two together that hey, lottery winner's dead. These two are dead. Well, I guess the kid's dead.
Yeah, Nora hasn't died yet.
They put the idea together basically that hey, and from what Claire told them also, okay, we can put together a list now of the order, but the order is actually in this movie going in reverse
Yes.
because, well, there's an idea that's because death's tying up loose ends.
So we
But the
so
but the
Grant,
whole the whole the whole thing is death tying up loose ends anyway, so it's kind of I don't
that's fair, but
know.
to be granted, we haven't gotten to that scene yet. But if you want to talk about it, I'll go ahead and spoil the surprise. The only ones we don't know about is Kimberly's friends, Evan, Tim, and Nora. Everyone else has had some kind of connection to our characters from part one. Burke was supposed to be in a shootout that was supposed to end his life, but he answered that call for Billy at the train tracks.
Yep.
Then you got the Kimberly, who was sitting at her home watching a news bit about the kid who strangled himself in
Mm,
part one, and that prevented her from getting the same fate as her mom, which was shot.
mhm.
But that I'm assuming, since if it's going backwards, but I'm assuming she was originally first to die canon wise to death. That's why that truck was originally meant to kill her that Burke saved her from.
Yes, and then, of course, the one guy, the actor who used to be on the TV show Living Single, was where I know from. He was going to be a teacher who would have been transferred over
Eugene.
to Eugene was gonna be transferring over to Miss Lupin's school from part
Y-
1 to
Yeah,
take over,
so
but where he
his
would have got stabbed.
right. Well, actually, from what I understand, the school he was at, he was about to get stabbed. He transferred from that school to
Right.
another one.
Okay.
Well, to Lupin school.
And Rory would be the last one because his death would have been in Paris at a movie theater that was stopped by what happened to Carter at the end of part one.
Yep. And then Kat, our businesswoman, who honestly probably looks the best out of the entire cast, she's only alive because she was going to a bed and breakfast, which apparently everyone suffocated in their sleep because of a gas leak. She's only alive because the bus she was driving on killed the girl from part one.
So it's kind of it's something this movie introduces, which it's a bit of a slippery slope because it's kind of like, okay, well, were these the only people affected? It's like you had everybody on that train, you had everybody else on that bus. I guess these are the only people that are affected that were supposed to die that were just thrown off essentially. But then we talked about, if you want to go in this for a second, you're thinking maybe, I think you mentioned that you're thinking that the order that they're going to die in is based on how they were going to die originally.
Yes. Because the only one that kind of doesn't make sense to this timeline is Eugene.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, Eugene dies last. But yet we also don't know when that stabbing was supposed to occur. Maybe he transferred out before the, like 6 months later, he pissed off a kid, like 5 months later
It
after
gets
Lupin's death.
it gets way too complicated to think of it that way. Like the only way you can do it, like where you can quickly surmise and think about it, is like, okay, the deaths of the characters in part one, and this character is related to that. So you gotta be like, okay, Cop Billy, Eugene, Miss Lupin,
Mm-hmm. Cat the
Kimber,
girl.
Kat the girl, Rory Carter,
Mm-hmm.
and Kimberly
With the, I forgot the friend's
To-
name.
Todd.
Todd. Okay, yeah, Kimberly and Todd.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's how you have to go with the order of it, basically. But then you're right. It's like the thing is the Eugene thing.
Unless
I,
Death originally thought or originally planned for Eugene to die from a collapsed lung, but was saved in time, even though I don't think paramedics got there that fast.
yeah, the idea that death does something and it doesn't get the job done. Like nobody really intervened with Eugene. He just naturally didn't die until he got to the hospital. Well, then he has to do death has to do more. But the Eugene thing kind of throws the whole thing off and makes me think that they don't want us to think that that is a theory. Like they don't want us to think that it's all based on that original order. Because anybody could have took 10 minutes, wrote that down, and said, okay, if that's the case, then we need Eugene to die at a certain point. Otherwise, that whole thing falls apart.
Well, that
So
also
that's
means
the thing.
Burke is actually supposed to die before Rory. But if I remember correctly, Burke actually had to dodge a branch that was about to fall on top of him.
Did you take? I didn't really take that as like anything really
So
though.
when you watch it without thinking about this order, I didn't take it as much except for making sure Burke couldn't stop what was about to happen to Rory.
Did somebody intervene on the branch thing?
I don't think so. I think Burke
Because if no,
just dropped out of the way.
then I don't think that counts as anything though. It's only skipping you if someone intervenes on your behalf, right? Like, so we can talk about Claire for a second. Her thing is interesting because at one point I think the canoe thing drops. That's trying to get her,
Right.
but her thing is she's not on their list. She's still on that old other list. So death with her, I think, is just basically like, all right,
Whenever he wants.
there's no rules with her. So he takes a stab at her with the canoe thing. And then I do think the way she dies was just pure coincidence that she happened to run into the room at the time that Eugene's thing was going to explode because death has no way to predict her behavior and say, hey, she's going to run to the room at that exact moment.
Well,
So,
I feel like somebody was going to get that got out of focus again. Fucker.
oh, you're back. You're back.
Yeah. But
It's something where you move your hands or something. Maybe.
yeah, so I'm trying to not move my hands as much. It's
Yeah.
kind of hard with me. But somebody had to have opened the room to get the explosion going because it wasn't until she opened the room when something ignited to actually cause the explosion.
So the most common thing would have been though, like a nurse or a doctor entering the room.
So then, yeah, Death had a plan that some random person was just going to die. That, or he was banking on one of the characters who is on his list to die.
It's collateral damage.
So now that we're done with the theories, let's go back a little and talk about Nora's death.
Yeah, which, I think society, well, has maybe a small healthy fear of elevators to a degree. Not as much as other things. I mean, you really don't expect anything bad to go wrong in an elevator, but something does go wrong like this, it's pretty traumatizing.
So for me, I do always have a fear that the elevator cords are gonna bust and just gonna fall and die.
Really?
Yeah, I hate heights in general, and an elevator that's taking me high up is not on my bucket list of things I want to do again.
Ugh, well, you would probably not you wouldn't like one of those elevators where, like, it's like see-through doors, so you can, like, see yourself rising up as you go up?
So I went to New York one year, and my class all went up to think it was called Top of the Rock. It was like an
Okay.
extremely tall building where you can see all of New York when you get up there.
Hmm.
I saw that and went, nope. One of the teachers actually had to stay down with me.
See, I'm fine if, like, I'm contained in a building basically, but I never wanna, like, look over something where I'm, like, high up or where there's, like, no guard there basically kinda thing. 'Cause I'm worried I'm gonna, like, just trip and fall or something like that, but if it's like a contained building, then I can be as high as possible, look down.
I
But if
think
there's
they
any
were I think the building was all the way on the roof. Yeah, there's like bars there. But I mean, who can't just like decide to get a stick up their ass, pick someone up by the leg, and chuck them over?
yeah, I don't even wanna, like I don't wanna stand on a bridge and, like, look over the bridge, none of that stuff. I have no interest in anything where I'm looking down and I'm not completely protected, so but elevators, yeah, I don't get any because that's, like because it is kinda, like, shield off, so, yeah, it doesn't feel like I'm in the air or, like, in a heights position, but you're scared about that part of it, so you're not scared about the idea of, like, your head getting lodged into the doors and just completely cut off.
In an older building, probably. In a newer building, not at all. Plus,
Nora
I've never known a man with a bunch of hooks in his damn basket.
yeah. I think no I think so, in the premonition, Nora and her son basically relatively die at the same time, right?
Yes.
Knowing that, we can theorize that Death had the option to choose which order he wanted them to die,
Well, he
and
did
I
try to go after Nora first, but a pigeon broke in and she stepped away before she got electrocuted.
okay. Well, I don't wanna go into the morality of death here, but I was gonna say that the cruelest thing is to have the mom watch her son die versus the mom dying first would have been the more appropriate. Basically, with Nora, she had to go through the most painful thing, losing a child, and then herself has to get, like, the most painful death in the movie. I don't understand why Death just doesn't like the name Nora or how to put her through that misery.
Well, I just want to bring up that she wouldn't have to go through that if her 15-year-old son did not run at a bunch of pigeons like a 9-year-old or
Yeah,
embark on a dang
I know.
work zone like a 9-year-old who doesn't know better. He's 15.
I know. I wanna defend him, but I can't because you're right. And
I'm
I'm not
sorry. He
I'm
deserved what
not
he got.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying what he got was a quick whatever. I'm saying that for her though, she doesn't like nobody should see their son smash to smithereens and then like get suffer the death she had. Like death. I'm just saying that death reserved the cruelest fate in this movie for poor Nora. And that's just how I feel about it. So
Yeah,
well,
you think
nobody else had to watch a loved one die and then
so?
yourself have that kind of death.
So I will say, with Nora, death probably could have left her alone. She just would have taken herself out.
Well, yeah, she was talking about basically she was in a bad place mentally for sure at that
Yeah,
point.
so I guarantee you, if death really was sadistic, it probably would have just left her alone after that. At least until
Well,
she started feeling better and then went back at her.
let's get into Eugene trying to kill himself because that actually introduces a new rule, which
That
is
you
the idea that you can't kill yourself before it's your turn. And that seems kind of stupid because if Death's plan is out of, like, whack and now he's targeting these people, wouldn't he be like, "Yeah, go ahead and kill yourself?" That's like I don't know, it's kinda
So that
huh?
I do have the theory. I guess it's not really a theory. It's more of an observation that death itself, though it's an invisible force, is a character. It's a character that wants
Yeah.
to have some form of fun, and it can't get fun if these characters do just let themselves die.
So you think he's taking some kind of pleasure out of this whole thing, basically?
It is very possible. I mean, most characters, even invisible forces like this, still needs a form of entertainment in a sense, or some just something. It can't just be. That's one of the
I
things I
don't
love.
know.
That's one of the things I
At
like about this particular movie is death feels like a character with all the elaborate bullshit it does. Versus, I mean, it kind of felt like that with part one as well, especially with the
oh, yeah.
very first death.
Yeah.
But
Oh my
unlike the
god.
all the
That that
other
that first death in part 1 is the one where he's most actively making things happen.
right.
He feels like he's doing things and, you know, if he's a character though, see, I can't see he's having fun with this. I would think if he's a character and we're just saying that somebody has assigned him the job of this whole death thing, basically, I would think his emotion would be just like pissed off because I would think that this whole thing is basically like throwing off his schedule. Like he's basically somebody is like giving these premonitions to our characters, throwing off his plan, making him do extra work, which I'm sure he's not getting paid overtime for. So I would think his emotion would be more like, "What? You didn't like I made this plan, you're not following it?" Like I would think he's more
Well,
annoyed or pissed off. So
so I kind of have another theory per se. I think because he actually has a design as per again, this could also be a kind of a vengeance thing as a character. He got in a sense, I want to say embarrassed because
yeah.
he kind of messed up his job at some point, so he
Mhm.
has to fix it. So I think it could also be revenge, but also, what if Death gave Kimberly the premonition so that way he can then kill them in the order they were originally supposed to die in? I know we're going back to that theory, but
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just always on board with I just don't think death is like to me, the underlying thing is it makes it feel like he's just making his job harder for himself if he's the one giving the premonitions. I really think there's some outside force, somebody on the other side, or somebody just messing up his plan, and death is just like, who keeps warning these people? Like what? Like every once in a while, someone gets a damn premonition. I feel like there's a comedy in here where you just like we saw Death's side. He's like trying to clean this up before his boss finds out. He's like, man, I gotta get this before before my boss finds out. I gotta get this squared away and get this put to bed. Like there's a comedic side
well,
to it, I guess. But
the thing is, if that was the case, then he would have just let Eugene shoot himself.
yeah, that's the part that's interesting. And that might be just you've annoyed me, so you're not gonna get off easy now. Like you killing yourself getting off easy. I'm going to,
I
make
want to
sure.
relish in what I plan on doing to you.
Which, like I said, sometimes there's very quick deaths, and sometimes few times there's pretty torturous, but sometimes they're very quick though. So
Mm.
it, it's it's just it's all theories. It's hard to figure out because we just don't know enough about that side of it. Um, we know, like I said, we know they are somebody's like not just giving premonitions, but there's signs. There's always signs. So somebody's leaving a trail of breadcrumbs to help out our protagonist.
Well, in
Um,
this case, whatever it is, it's constantly giving our protagonist visions of a white van, pregnant lady, and water.
yeah. So this part of the plot, I'm not a huge fan of. Basically, they figure out the idea of well, pretty much the idea is that new life is they're told by, I believe, Tony Todd, right?
Yes,
Only through new life can whatever.
can defeat death.
So the idea is here that, hey, was somebody pregnant? Because if they were meant to die, then we can, make sure they give birth, and then that new life will,
But the
solve
problem
solve
is, you're banking on the fact that that character was supposed to die. What if? What if? That character was not supposed to die.
Well, and this is the one big plot contrivance, I would say, is that they're about to do all this stuff that's based on the idea of finding this girl who's gonna give birth, like, holding her not holding her hostage, but holding her basically so she can give the baby, going to the hospital to track and all this stuff. All of this would have been solved very quickly if Kimberly just gets that vision, that memory of, "Hey, I don't think she was supposed to die."
Or they
So,
not fully bank on it. Like I said, I'm fine with the idea, but at least make sure that the ones in the group know what's going on, so at least one of the girls can get pregnant and you can protect her.
the which would have been this you're talking about taking the movie in a It Follows direction. So, um, I don't wanna explore that idea too much because it
We
gets
kind
kinda
of
weird.
already went over that.
Uh, yeah, so it's just the idea that she finds out about this her not like, the pregnant lady not being involved. She finds out conveniently after all our characters have basically been killed. It's like, "Lady, if you would've just figured this out earlier, we coulda, like" but they use that to, like, drive the plot of the movie, which I'm not a huge fan of. Um, and I poor Claire, wrong place, wrong time. We already talked about gets blown to smithereens.
Yeah, poor cat gets the
Oh,
most
yeah,
unhelpful. For one, you see the giant PCB pipe through the thing, very sharp point.
yeah,
Most EMTs in real life, I mean, I know it's a movie, in real life would cut that piece so that way there's no sharp, pointy thing aimed at her back of her skull.
right.
So that way, when they slam the front end with the jackhammer and the airbag slams into her face, she's not going to have a pole in her head no more.
Yeah.
But no, we get the worst EMTs ever.
I I have to admit, I laughed. This is this is very comedic to me. This is, this whole sequence now where they're on the road basically, they pull over, all this stuff starts to happen. This is definitely my second favorite sequence of the movie behind the opening sequence. This to me is like the climax of the movie because I don't we'll get to the ending after that, but so much stuff happens there in just a few minutes. First of all, they get to an accident. Eugene's lung gets punctured,
Mhm.
which probably was Death's idea to kill Eugene, but Eugene has stronger lungs than Death had planned on, so he's gonna be fine going to the hospital. Um, Rory saves a kid,
Yes, his name is Brian.
and we'll get to poor Brian later on, but for now, he can go home and watch cartoons.
Cartoons.
Um, kind of a nice little moment of Rory. Good timing on Rory's part too to actually like be like, "Hey, Kimberly, if something happens to me, go to my apartment,
Clean
clean
out
up
my
all
stash.
clean up my stash. I don't want my mom to find that."
And then immediately gets cut in like three pieces.
And he did ask Kimberly, he was like, "Is my death gonna be painful?" And I don't know. Like,
That looked pretty instant. I mean, you have the shock on his face, but I think that shock was there as he watched the barbed wire come straight at him.
yeah, yeah, it's hard to say, like, yeah, I mean, he seemed to die pretty instantly there. I really have a strong feeling that Kimberly did not honor his even though
No.
she took his wallet and his keys, which is kinda curious because, like, dude, you're giving it like you plan to die in the next few minutes. You're giving your wallet and your keys to her. Like,
I,
you don't plan on making it out of this scene, dude. Like like, I don't
well,
understand.
you here's another thing. Did he? I mean, does his wallet actually have his ID in it that has his address? Does she know where to go?
Well, she has access to a cop who can pretty quickly find that information, though. So, that'll be the
Yeah, well,
if
the
she
cop
consults him
follows her into a wood chipper later.
well, I mean, we'll get to that too. I mean,
See if
uh,
anyone wants to find that one as canon.
we'll come back to that. But yeah, I hope that she honored it, but I got a feeling she never thought of Rory again, and
Bro,
probably probably kept his wallet and stole his car. Maybe not. No, I'm just playing. I mean, yeah,
I
give me the key. But I mean, what else are you gonna do with his keys though? You should probably do something with it. But neither here nor there. We're gonna go to the hospital now. Well, I'm saying that whole sequence was just fun stuff. And
mm,
and the airbag thing, I thought it was a creative way to
it was
kill that.
creative, but it kind of shows our EMTs are either very incompetent
Yeah.
or they just did not like her.
I just laughed though. I don't it happened so suddenly, and you knew something was gonna happen, but you didn't quite know what. And then and again, I don't think death can see the future, but the way this played out, she dies, she drops the cigarette, and that sets in motion everything else.
Right.
So it's kind of like it's like death. Did you you planned it like that to happen exactly like that, and then that lead to Rory's death? I guess it's like whoa,
Some
like
I feel like Rory's death was 100% an accident because, as you said, death should not be able to control people. And the news van crashing into a rock just so gasoline will spill out, and then her just dropping the cigarette on the outside instead of on
yeah,
the inside.
yeah. Are we saying death basically controls the universe at that point? It's kind of like can he see the future? Because that's like not just something happening that he can plan on, like he can do. That's like events happening in real time before he knows that are leading to death. So it's kind of like it's like whoa, like how much power does death have in this mofo? Like, jeez.
Something tells me Rory's death was 100% an accident. Death did not have that planned, and it just happened. And he's like, "I'll
You think
take
death
it."
was that's just like whoa, save me some time.
You're right.
Oh, I mean maybe. Uh,
Because remember, it was supposed to be Kat, and then Eugene is supposed to be next to die if
yeah.
we're following that kind of order. So the fact that Eugene had a punctured lung before Kat even got a death is maybe that's why death didn't let him die. Maybe death did something to keep him from bleeding, suffocating.
They asked the producer in this YouTube interview about, why'd you kill off Claire here? And he was saying basically like back then, the way they made deals with actors was like you would have like an option for them for like say a sequel, but then if you didn't have the option for the next sequel, it's like something where financially you'd have to pay them more money to come back or something. There was like something more to it where he compared to like he had produced that and he was also producing the American Pie sequels, and he was like for American Pies 1 and 2, we had all the actors on options where we could bring them back for cheap for the next one. But for the third American Pie, we had to leave some of the cast off because we didn't have the options. We had to pay them a lot more money. So they were in the planning stage of like, if we bring her back for part 3, we have to pay her more money. So there's something more involved in the idea of killing off Claire than just a story,
Well,
which
wasn't
sucks. But
wasn't Ollie Lauder also on Heroes at this point as well?
it feels like it would have been maybe right before Heroes or right around that time. I'd have to look up when Heroes started. This is early 2000s. Heroes was probably early to mid 2000s. So maybe around the same time. So maybe she wouldn't have wanted to come back for the third one. But the two things they were thinking too was like the producer also said that he said with these movies we never know if there's going to be another sequel. So he's like some of it is like we try to make them self-contained to where we're not really planning for sequels. But he brought that financial thing of like there was consideration of like we'd have to pay her more money if we brought her back for a third one.
You know,
So
see, you don't need to bring her back. Just give her a happy ending and be happy about it. Fuck test audiences.
well, I mean, the alternate ending of part 1 gives her a happy ending, and then in this movie, technically she had beaten death by putting herself in the pad room. Because you can just say like probably death was gonna have a hard time getting to her. She had kind of solved the puzzle, even though she was probably gonna have a miserable life going forward.
It'll be fair. She'd probably have a better life just avoiding death on the outside and eventually dying. I mean, who knows? She probably had more fun in this one day outside than she did the 1 year being in that padded room.
Yeah, I mean, look, she is not just because not because just we know her from part 1. She's the strongest character in this movie just because of what she does even in this movie. She's like the more take charge person in the movie. She's the one with the plan. She's the one with all the information. So she's
She's the
already the
one
best
with the crispy
character.
skin.
No, no, no.
It's crispy now.
I you could have at least had her sacrifice herself in some kind of positive way. If Eugene was gonna die anyway, you're just saying that they both died. There's no sacrifice there. I I didn't like that, but I understand now that it gives a surprise element too that nobody is safe, and we want to hit the point home that death will get everybody eventually. Now let's talk about Kimberly having a premonition of bloody hands, a premonition of a van going into a lake,
And collagen.
and Kimberly looks down and sees, hey, I have bloody hands, so
Yes.
I must be the one that's gonna have to go to the bottom of the lake, and I hope Jason Voorhees isn't down there to get me.
You know, how about send your boyfriend in? Just,
Hey, I think that
he can
cop.
be just as resuscitated.
First of all, that wasn't her boyfriend, and then the cop likes her, but I don't think he likes her that much. He's like, "Oh, you want me to be human sacrifice? Let's flip a coin or something." And the cop doesn't have bloody hands, but
Fuck it. You don't
hey,
need bloody hands.
was it pretty convenient that like, okay, she's like, "I gotta do this," basically. So she walks out the double doors of the hospital. Conveniently, the door's like shut on the cop, and now he's like locked in the hospital or something.
So,
But was it anticlimactic that she gets in the van and I guess the lake is like next door to the hospital? Like,
well, to be fair, also, technically she would have been next in line.
Mhm.
I guess unless you don't count the branch falling down on Eugene or on Burke as his attempt. But yeah, it does seem kind of coincidence like death stopped the door from opening, but at this point they're trying to stop death by doing something that me personally don't think is going to work.
It depends on how death sees the idea of life. If death sees somebody, obviously you give birth, that's clearly new life. If death sees the idea of you dying and being brought back to life, being resuscitated, it's a technicality, but does that count? They're going with the idea of that, oh yeah, because she is given the premonition. So somebody is saying, hey, this is the way. So she's following the premonition.
Yeah, the other thing is technically it is a faster way of doing new life if it does count versus waiting 9 months to have a baby.
Yeah, something about it, just like of all the movies, none of the movies really ever defeat death per se. But this one felt kind of just off to me just because like everything is so driven by the two premonitions of her realizing that the pregnant lady has nothing to do with anything. And then now her also getting the premonition of the bloody hands, the van going in the lake, all that stuff. And then the timing of those things happening just like in a convenient way for her to be like, oh, well, I realize this now and blah, blah, blah. It was kind of, I didn't love it. But the plan seems to work. I mean, she's resuscitated in the hospital. She has some hospital jello. She enjoys the
She's
taste.
she's at a picnic with a random family she met when two of her acquaintances die.
Yeah, the likelihood of first of all, we don't know how much time has passed, but the like, it's funny. We know how much time has passed. We don't know if they are boyfriend and girlfriend now. We don't really get an idea of like, is there anything there? But them getting invited to a picnic randomly.
By random people just to
Now,
watch their son blow up by a grill.
as I say, when you go to a barbecue, I mean, you have hot dogs, hamburgers,
A
little
crispy
kids,
fried human.
crispy fried human. That man went poof.
He didn't. Well, most of them went poof. His arm went on his mother's plate.
Yes.
That was hilarious. I laughed
Well,
every single time I see that scene.
I thought it was a fun. It's a even though I don't like the ending itself per se, I do like that as the final scene. It's a fun way to end the movie, and also, unfortunately, to me, it indicates that death. Now that he's taking care of that kid, in my opinion, he's now going to circle back and come back for them.
Well, do you want to talk about do you want to talk about this now or talk about it with part 3 since it's technically revealed in part 3 with a special feature?
Let's just talk about it right now because
Okay.
it is still so basically. The thing about this though is that because it's not explicitly stated in the movies, it's up to the viewer if you want to treat this as canon or not. You don't have to take this as canon. Going by the end of part 2, with what we see, you can be like, "Hey, I believe these characters survived. They went on to get married. They went to barbecues where kids didn't explode. Fun life," right? But if you explore further and research a little bit like, "Man, they never say what happened to them," you would come across the truth. Nick, do you want to give the truth on this?
So the truth, again, as stated, doesn't need to be canon in your mind. It kind of isn't mine. I'm pretty sure Vic, because he's a sadistic bastard. Um, but what happens is, Kimberly goes to a hardware store to ask for directions, and who happens to be there but Burke? A truck crashes into there. They run to the back, and Kimberly's jacket gets caught in a wood chipper. And as she's getting pulled in, Burke tries to stop her from getting pulled in, and he gets pulled in along with her, and they both die. I read that. I'm dead serious. I'm telling you, death is a character in this damn movie, and
Wait a minute.
that very last scene and this definitely shows it.
Wait a minute. I mean, okay, Alex got a brick in the face, which seems pretty tame comparatively, because they say in the article he died instantly with a brick in the face. These two characters fed into a wood chipper?
Well, to be fair, if they went in head first, they died instantly.
They got the Michael Myers death, pretty much. The Halloween Ends death. Jeez. So this cop is he allowed himself to get dragged in too to the wood chipper? I mean, if
yeah, because he's trying to say he was trying to save her, and I guess when she was going in, his arms got caught in it.
Oh my god. That's a really bad day. You go to save her and you get fed to the wood chipper too?
Yep. I mean, that's better than what I originally thought when you told me that there was a wood chipper involved.
All right, folks. I guess if you like these two characters, then ignore that and just go with the happy ending that I would describe, that the movie goes with. But if you don't really care about these characters and you're wondering why, here's why I take the wood chipper thing serious, because they're never brought up again in the sequels, and the people in the sequels most likely would have read about the survivors and looked them up for, advice or consultation. The fact they're never mentioned again leads me to believe that, unfortunately, the wood chipper won the battle.
Yeah, whether it was by what I just described or my headcanon, which is a little too explicit for this.
Okay. Well, your mind does go to sick and dark twisted places. Maybe you should leave that on the cutting room floor like they left the original ending of part 1.
Well, I mean, or the way they left Kimberly and Bert's bodies coming out of the wood chipper.
Yeah, we didn't really need to see that scene filmed, because that'd have been pretty ridiculous.
And you know what? I'm going to say this again. Nothing beats a wood chipper. Pretty sure you could put Death's invisible ass in there and he'd get ripped up just as quick.
Oh yeah, easy. All right, if you have nothing else. Oh, well, actually, I got some fun things real quick. I want to go over some trivia facts with you, Nick, and get your reaction on some things, because
just giving you a heads up, my timer is currently at 1:19.
Really?
Yeah.
Has it been that long?
Oh, there was that 5-minute we had to kind of stop for the.
Yeah, I feel like the time goes by quicker when we're doing it on video, I guess. All right, I'll do a quick go through a quick 5 minutes of this, and then we'll do the final thoughts real quick.
Okay.
All right, Nick. So the good thing about these movies is that they do put in a lot of extra things that are sort of fun, we can say, but you really don't really know about until you go research it online. So I'm gonna go through a few maybe interesting things with you that maybe you didn't know about, maybe the audience doesn't know about unless they look this up. In terms of Claire's death, when Claire is talking to Mr. Tony Todd, the mortician does foreshadow her death by saying that Claire, you have such fire in you.
Well,
Well, yeah.
well, I mean, her personality, I guess, foreshadowed her death too.
Yeah, yeah.
The crispy fried human.
Oh
Yeah, that
god.
was
I'm
Death did
I
that
don't
three
see
times in this one.
he likes fire in this one. I don't see KFC adding that to the menu anytime soon, but Death does like that.
Crispy fried long pig.
Let's see. Nora's death is based on a real life incident. A surgical resident at a Houston hospital was decapitated by a malfunctioning elevator in 2002. The
I've
doctor's
heard that.
shoulders were pinned to the doors, which then allowed the ceiling to slice off most of the head as the elevator continued to move upwards. Um, when Nora tucks Tim in at night, dimming the lights, his face is illuminated with a skull outline, foreshadowing his death.
Hmm.
I didn't notice that. That's
I
pretty
didn't notice
interesting.
that either. I got the Blu-ray.
Huh. Let's see. Claire is partially responsible for Nora's death. Eugene and Nora were riding the elevator to the L level to leave Officer Burke's apartment, which is on the 3rd floor. After Claire saw the sign of a man with hooks, she ran the elevator and pressed the down button. However, after she pressed it, she decided to take the stairs. It was because of this the elevator, after stopping at the L level, ascended to reach the 3rd floor, where Claire pressed the elevator button, which severed Nora's head. So
Hmm.
Claire had a part in killing Nora.
I mean, it makes sense.
According to the
Very clear.
novel, according to the novel, this is pretty random. The fire that killed Claire and Eugene was originally started by a birthday cake. Oh, okay.
Now the novels
Yeah.
were written after the movies actually came out, so someone had some fun.
Yeah. In Thomas's apartment, Eugene says to Claire, "If death is after you, why don't you just stay the hell away from us?" Unfortunately, they both die in the same explosion. I guess that's foreshadowing. Just stay away from me, Claire. Don't come in my room.
I mean, to be
Uh,
fair, he just would have suffocated. The explosion only happened when she opened the door and like oxygen went in there.
yeah. When Eugene tried to commit suicide with a gun, the gun had 6 bullets in it, which marked him as the 6th survivor to die. Huh.
For me, this movie is a little bit better because I like the formula. I feel like the formula is perfected in this one. I feel like the death is more of a character in this one. Characters got a little bit of backstory on why they're fully targeted versus
Mhm.
versus the previous movie is just they got off, and the backstory of them getting off is actually what forced them to be fully targeted in this one.
Mhm.
Overall, characters weren't all that great, but it's still a fun time. Still kind of a fun way to spend a Friday night making your wife watch this because she's afraid of gore, and then
Mhm.
she gets pleasantly surprised. So I'm giving this movie a 2.5. Be a little higher if I'm allowed to add nostalgia, but I'm not going to. So 2.5 for me. Fun time to watch. Enjoy yourselves.
Okay. Nick coming in with the always reliable and consistent 2.5 stars. Um, okay. I will say my positives first. I think that opening log scene, I call it log scene, which is just the car pileup scene, but I guess
Yeah,
the logs would stick out in my mind because they're so iconic. The fear that's put in society makes that a memorable scene. I think it's the best scene in the movie. I think it's probably the best opening sequence in the franchise. But I think everything else about the movie is not as good as some of the other movies. I think the characters are the weakest. Um, the death scenes are all pretty nice. They're all pretty elaborate. They're gory, but as you said, not torture porn. I didn't like Kimberly or the cop. I didn't care for them. Now, I wouldn't say they're annoying. They're not Tina from Halloween Part 5. But but just kind of the main characters of the series, they didn't leave an impression on me. Like I didn't really care about them by the end. I thought the presence of Claire elevated the movie big time. If this movie didn't have Claire, I would think it has maybe the weakest characters in the entire franchise. but the presence of Claire brings it up a big level for me. I didn't really like the resolution in terms of the new life thing and just the premonitions playing such a role in terms of like the convenience of timing for getting the premonitions and everything. But the death scenes, the opening sequence, and the overall fun of the movie is still pretty good. So I'm also gonna go with 2.5 stars. Um, I think I gave the first one 3 stars. So for me, this is 2.5. It's below the first one. We'll have to see where we go with the rest of the franchise, but 2.5 stars for me and Nick. You got to realize it's pretty good. That means we like the movie, we enjoy it a lot. It's just not hitting our upper tier movies, basically. But overall, fun movie.
And as always, y'all don't have to go home, but you do because you got to sleep and get to work in the morning. So I'm sorry. Go to sleep, go to work, make some money, get yourself some popcorn chicken while you're at it.
And if you do, and when you do go home, just for now, just avoid the highway. Just
Yeah,
take a back road for now.
sounds like a plan.
Good night.
Peace.